Okay, so without further ado, let's get it on. Okay, so we're basically going to have a look at some of the activities. We're going to look at practicing, not so much in detail, but about a bit of professionalism. We're going to talk about something that is called the 3 A's of customer support. And we're going to understand the basics of what to do and what not to do in some difficult situations. It's a fairly open session today, so comments in the live chat are much appreciated. We should have a little bit of time here, and hopefully we will crack through this and have a good time. So there's some vocabularies, 3 A's: acknowledge, align, and assure. CRM, which is a customer resource management system. CX is a customer experience. We're getting these all out of the way to start with, aren't we? I love the acronyms. We will try and highlight these as we go through. HR, human resources. We love human resources. And SLA, our service level agreement that you should remember from last week's session, I believe. Okay, so as a general introduction, some famous quotes on the left-hand side. They may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Okay, it's basically a version of a quote attributed to a variety of different people have basically been attributed with this particular quote. What it's really talking about is it's not about how we well, it is about how we talk to people, but it's not about the message that we give. It's not about actually what we say to people, but it's about the feeling that they walk away with. That is a key message to take away from this point. Now, probably what we should first start off is ask ourselves is, why am I wearing a suit today? Professional attire. We're talking about professionalism, okay? How does me wearing this suit make you feel as potentially a customer? Because essentially you're a customer here. How does it make you feel? Put it into the live chat. Precious, that's fine. A few minutes late is okay. We'll see you in a minute. So how does that make you feel? Please keep the comments clean, okay? We are recording the conversations. More serious environment. I even had my hair cut today. That's how dedicated I am to the cause. You feel better in shorts there? Yes, me too, Luca. Proper businessman. Wow, I'm looking very professional, aren't I? Makes me feel guilty for wearing shorts and a t-shirt. So Paul is expressing, and let me paraphrase for you here, Paul, you're feeling slightly uncomfortable about the fact that, hold on, I'm wearing a suit and you're sat there in shorts. Jeans and t-shirt would be great. So Marcos, is that for the location or for what I should be wearing? So professional attire is important. What we try to do is essentially we try to mimic our customers and our environment to a certain extent. Okay, professional attire generally is considered for men to be a shirt, a tie, jacket, and trousers. We are in the modern era, we're happily losing the jacket and we're losing the tie now for a lot of professional attire. We kind of drop into the smart mode by basically going that down. Ladies, of course, you wear, not very knowledgeable on this part thing as a bloke. You obviously wear smart dresses, shirts, blouses, I think they call them, and skirts. Okay, so you tend to defer onto those particular items. Why is it important? Because part of what I'm trying to do is project an image to you. Now, the reason I don't wear this all the time is because if I turned up in a shirt, tie, and a suit all the time, not only would I be ridiculously hot, but it makes you guys feel not so comfortable about the image that I'm portraying, about the message that I'm getting across. Yes, but if I was going to a business meeting and I wanted to sit in front of a couple of company directors or owners, yeah, man, suited and booted is the way I've got to go. Interview stuff, yes, you've got to always over-assume with an interview and make sure you wear really smart stuff. Always aim high, because then you can basically dress down. Now on that, let's have a little vote. First impressions count, says Ronald. Very true, and we drop into that as well. So let's have a little vote on the live chat. Who thinks I should continue? So a thumbs up if you think I should continue the whole presentation in this shirt and tie and suit, or a thumbs down if you think I can take it off. Marty, Marcos, Sebastian. There's no more sweets for you guys. Do you know the temperature it is out here? Gavitsu wants it. Oh, no, no, come on. It's so unfair, isn't it? Luca. Okay, thank you. Because Luca said, because I like Luca. Luca, you get a bucket of sweets coming your way. I am going to have to take it off. It is absolutely roasting in the UK. And if I do the whole lot in this, I will be happily melted away. So I do have a suit. I do have shirts. I do have ties. Oh, I can't last till the first break. I'm no good with these sort of things. Sadly, not in this temperature. Thank you very much for those who voted for me to take it off. Okay, so professional attire. So it is important that we wear what's appropriate for the engagement that we're basically going on to. You can re-watch the video, Gabitsu, okay? So active listening, etiquette, and empathy. Well, let me drive back a bit. One thing was really pointed out there was you only get one chance. I can't remember who pointed out. You don't get one chance to make a first impression. Okay, so first impressions count. I believe it is said that literally those first impressions will happen over the first 7 seconds. Some people say 3, some people say 7. Normally, when I'm hiring someone, I know within those first 7 seconds whether or not the interview is going to go well or not. And half of that, wrongly speaking, is how they dress, the attire, the confidence, what the image that they project when they walk into that first interview position. Okay, potentially it's wrong on me because we then basically tack on a whole load of other metrics on the side where we have questions, answers, and tests and things like that, but then make a final decision. But generally, in that first 7 seconds sets it up. Let's get that attire right. One thing that is really important is active listening, etiquette, and empathy. 3 really important things. Active listening basically involves essentially communicating on the level to demonstrate that you are paying attention to what is going on, making sure you're fully engaged. So we can provide verbal and non-verbal clues for this, okay, and avoid interruptions. Verbal clues are things like nodding, smiling at the person, going, yeah, totally agree with what you're saying. Okay, verbal clues are things like just a general, we kind of do it, and things such as paraphrasing. Okay, so we can use a paraphrasing during the conversation to essentially repeat back to them what they've said in a slightly different way. Such as if a customer says to you, I'm having a problem with my HP server, you can say, oh, your HP server is giving you problems. Quick paraphrasing, they know I'm paying attention and I've actually listened to what they've said. Okay, so we're going to make sure we run our active listening. Avoid interrupting the customer, okay, when they're trying to explain the problem, and take notes whenever you're able, but don't deliberately take notes. It's no good if you're talking to me and I'm like this, looking at my pen and pad. Okay, that's not me active listening. That's me ignoring you and writing some stuff down. So let's basically make sure our visual clues, if we are in a visual one-to-one space, are there. And if they're not, obviously, if you're just on a telephone, it doesn't matter what you do with your head, but what you do with the rest of you does project through that telephone. So as I said, one of the best verbal clues you can give is to attempt to restate the problem. Making eye contact, as you said, smiling. Second thing to bear in mind on our magic list that we had there is etiquette. Okay, don't annoy the customer by doing things that you shouldn't be doing. Avoid distractions. Avoid personal calls. If I'm having a conversation with you, my phone rings, I should ignore the phone. Phones are the most annoying things in the world. It's the only object in our world that will simply bang on your door and ring at you until you answer it. It says, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. I'm more important than whatever it is you are doing. Okay, they're not. It's a call. I've got voicemail. You can get a voicemail. Okay, the person I'm interacting with now is the most important thing at the moment. Avoid texting. Okay, traditional stuff, isn't it? Do not text while you're in the meetings. Avoid social media sites. Avoid personal interruptions. It's all about getting the etiquette right. These are things that someone that's speaking to you, either by phone, email, SMS, or something like that, will make sure that you are doing. Because if you break these, then straight away you're setting the customer onto edge, and it's not a good thing. Part of etiquette is also using professional language. Avoid jargon. Okay, acronyms. I hate acronyms. Training acronyms are an absolute nightmare. Okay, avoid using with your customer because you don't know your customer understands the acronyms that you are using unless you've highlighted them previously before and you both agreed. You know, if your customer uses an acronym and you understand it, that's fine. You can carry on using that acronym. If your customer uses an acronym that you are not sure about, then it does you no harm just to flag it and say, excuse me, can you just expand that acronym so I know we're talking about the same thing? Avoid slang languages because, of course, we do have different slang terms that are used throughout. I mean, England's a nightmare throughout the country. As soon as you start driving north, the slang gets slightly different. There's different interpretations to different words and other things such as that. I mean, we call people mongrels up here, meaning a dog breed that is basically a mix of dog breeds. If you use that down in Australia, man, that's a massive insult for them. Okay, so there is differences. So avoid using slang. Make sure your communication is clear and concise. Do not talk into your hand. Do not talk into your arm or anything else like that. Make sure it's clear and concise. If you do happen to put your customer on hold, telephone working we're talking about here, keep it under 2 minutes. Some companies will have special instructions given to you if you are basically going to be on the telephone a lot of the time. Try and adhere to those. My general rule is it's got to be under 2 minutes and ask the customer if they would like the music or not. Okay, we know we can mute them, essentially, to put them on hold. It simply kills the microphone. But some customers don't like that because they can't hear anything and they think you cut them off. Okay, some customers prefer the music on hold or the traditional beeping that happens in the old-fashioned telephone system. Okay, so make sure you try and adhere to that. No one likes to be stuck on hold for any length of time. Now, along with etiquette, we bang into something called empathy. Okay, empathy is really about putting yourself in the customer's shoes. How does he feel or she feel about the fact something is going wrong? Why have they phoned you? You've got to feel that empathy between them because that will then allow you to start building a bond together. And we will talk about the we in solving problems rather than the I and you in solving problems. Okay, appear to be genuinely curious. It may be your last call of the day, but please be curious about it. Please be upbeat. I always recommend when you're answering a telephone that you kind of stand up and do it, only because it then gets you, bigger in the chest. It gets you more engaged. It kind of wakes you up a little bit. If it's your last call of the day, you're feeling a bit down, yeah, stand up and do it and smile when you first take that call. Because although you can't see the smile, it does definitely come through on the telephone. Empathy is also about asking questions, so relating to the customer. Can't relate to them unless you know what's going on. Okay, so ask open questions, which will allow them to explain things in a broad sense, and make sure you listen to them. Don't interrupt them. Let them talk away. And then come in with some closed questions to try and narrow things down. Any questions about those first three topics that we've basically done? Great stuff. Acknowledge, align, assure. We mentioned at the start, these are our 3 A's, our triple A's that we basically use. So it's a good framework, 3 A's. It's associated normally with Apple customer service training. Okay, it's not true to say they invented it. It's been around for ages before Apple, but it is definitely something that they brought in because Apple loves doing big things. They're very expensive machines. Let's make sure we've got a framework in place for our support guys so that they can give the best customer service. Okay, so the 3 A's in there. So let's run through them piece by piece. Acknowledge. Okay, acknowledge that there's a problem in the first place without being dismissive or immediately recommending a solution. Okay, so you've got to acknowledge that the customer's having a bad day, something's gone wrong with them, and you build that bit of empathy by basically rephrasing the question that is asked or rephrasing the issue. Next one along it is align. So align with the customer using empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. You know, you've got to understand that it is difficult for them. If they've lost a document or something like that, or something's caught fire, you know, you've got to align with that empathy. So, oh my God, it must have been really bad that that caught fire for you. I understand how you're feeling. Okay. And that will begin to build all that essential empathy that you will need to guide the customer through some particular problems. And assurance. They're phoning you because they're at the end. They don't know what to do. They're having problems. They want someone to literally take them by the hand, assure them that things are going to be okay. I know we might not literally take them by the hand, assure them that things are going to be okay, and assure them that you'll work together. I use the together and the we phrases a lot to make sure that you are then building bigger empathy with them, because it's now a shared problem. My nan always used to say, a problem shared is a problem halved. Bless her soul. So you've got to share these things. If the customer feels like it's shared and now it's both of you looking after the issue, and all of a sudden it lightens his load a bit. As we look at the 3 A's in action. So here's a good example of these. Acknowledge. Thank you for contacting us with this issue today. Thank you. Thanks for phoning us up. Yeah, we've acknowledged that you are phoning us. Align. I know it must be frustrating for you to have to deal with it right now. He may be phoned up. You may be saying, I've got to go and pick the kids up from school. Let's try and get this done quickly. And then assure. But I'm certain the we again comes in, we can work together, combining it again, to get this sorted out. So we are going to find a solution. We're going to work together to find it. It's us. It's a we job. Okay, and that's really what the 3 A's are really about. Acknowledge, align, and assure. Has anyone got any experience of when they've actually used this? You may not have remember using it, but show of hands if you've ever used this and potentially a case that you did use it for. I see a couple of people typing there, so I'll give you a couple of seconds to kind of crack things up. Worked for T-Mobile for years on the phone. Paul, you are probably very experienced with some of this then if you've worked for years with T-Mobile. Did they do the 3 A's at T-Mobile as part of your training? It was 1-to-1 when you started. God, that is a while. Sorry, Paul, you're feeling about as old as me now, aren't you? I used these 3 A's only today. My son, amazing boy, lovely. He's doing his Duke of Edinburgh. He's due to go on Thursday. I said to him this morning, have you got all your kit? Have you got your kit? Yeah, of course I have, Dad. Of course I have. I've had it ready for ages. Got your boots? No, I haven't got any boots. So I acknowledged that and I said, oh, so you haven't got any of your boots then for your thing. And I aligned with it and I said, it must be frustrating not to have your boots that you need for tomorrow's Duke of Edinburgh walk. And then I assured him, I said, I'm sure that you can walk in your socks. No, I said, I'm sure that we will go and get you some boots today together. God love the boy. Paul Bird says not 3 A's, but there's a lot of CS type training. I like you're talking about today. Well, Paul, feel free to chip in with any of your examples and your experiences then if you've done any of this already, because we do love a good chat around these. Yeah, Mardy, you can basically use it on a lot of situations. So just as we did with troubleshooting, remember we talked about troubleshooting, it's not just for computers. The general process of troubleshooting a break fix solution, if it's in your car, or if it's on your bicycle, or if it's something else similar to that, can be applied across that as well as in the computer environment as well. So it is very useful, especially if you have children that forget their boots. Good. So I tell you what, let's drop into the first Kahoot quiz then. I'll give you all a little bit of time basically to get ready in the Kahoot. Some of you can join on. Be lovely to see who gets the sweeties today. And I've already programmed Kahoot to give some minor scores for anyone who gave a thumbs up for me wearing a shirt and a tie for the whole session. Only joke. Okay, we ready? Anyone waiting? If you're waiting, shout now in the live chat. Otherwise, I'm going to hit the start button. Good. Eddie joining there. Good. Okay, quite a lot of us in the Kahoot today. That's beautiful. Okay, ready, steady. Let's have a look at the first question. What are the three A's? Lots of fastest fingers first coming in there. Oh, my word, look at that. 17 right, 2 wrong, unfortunately. Acknowledge, align, and assure the three A's. Good, let's see who that puts at the top. Mardi, perfect. Sebastian up there, Gabino, Cablan, Marcos, good. Let's see if we can creep a few more into that leaderboard, shall we? True or false? Ah, split. I knew that one would split people because it is no longer super true that your professional attire is a suit, a tie with a shirt. Okay, no longer is it that sort of direction. Professional attire is if I turned up to a business meeting simply in a white shirt, nicely pressed white shirt, that would probably be acceptable. You know, if it's warm outside, this sort of dress code would be fine, depending on my target audience. Okay, again, we've got to match with your target audience on there. So definitely good. I don't know if you saw the image on there. Did anyone pay attention to the image? There's a bonus if anyone can tell me who the image was. Casual attire does also work nowadays. It's kind of a bit variable, to be honest with you. I would always say if you're hitting an interview, it's a suit and a tie, simply because you want to make the best impression. You want to tell them you've got a suit and a tie for starters. Don't think anyone had paid attention to the image on there. Good. Okay. Okay, let's see how that affects the leaderboard. Gabino, well done. Straight up there. Joe, Peter. I know it's a bit of a cheeky question, wasn't it? When there's two answers could be done. All right, last one for this particular round. Multi-select. Select all that apply to etiquette when talking to a customer. Fast numbers coming in now. It's good. Smashing it through. I can see 16 of you or 14 of you got everything right. And I think a couple of others probably just didn't remember to press the right buttons there. Well done. That's very good from everyone over the first three. Let's see how that affects the leaderboard. Gabino is on fire, Joe. GZA, Ithasham. I probably pronounced that horribly wrong. My apologies. And Eddie in there. Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Well done, people. And we're going to drop him. Sudden death of the Wild West. Yes, Marcus basically says, Kahoot reminds me sudden death in the Wild, Wild West. They used to do computer games based around that sort of thing, didn't they? If you don't click fast enough, you die. Lots of those sort of things. Marty asks, does casual attire work also nowadays? You know, we use the different terms, don't we? Professional attire, smart casual, and then casual. I tend to drop it into those three categories. If you're meeting someone for the first time, just like we said with interviews and just like we said with some meetings, go for the top brass, okay? Go with a suit, go with a tie and a shirt, okay? If it's the second time round and he turned up, in an open shirt, pair of trousers or jeans or something like that, then yeah, match what he wore. Feel free basically to drop to whatever they happen to be wearing. I used to have, when I was working at Microsoft, when I was young in product support services, we used to run a telephone system, answering emails, telephones, messages, and things such as that. That's literally how we got the majority of our customer experience from. But we always used to have the odd customer who used to look up where our building was, and they'd actually turn up with their PC. Like, they'd bring it in, or they'd turn up with a box of software, or they'd turn up literally on the doorstep, ringing on the door. And I used to get volunteered all the time to simply go down and see them, because that was probably one of my duties, I guess. So I always used to keep a shirt or a polo shirt in the office all the time. So when they used to knock on the door, I'd always have a pair of jeans on or a pair of trousers, but sometimes it was just, a t-shirt or something like that, which wasn't quite good for greeting a customer if you're Microsoft. So you'd quickly slip on your Microsoft logoed polo shirt and you'd wander out to see them and say hi, press the flash, do the bit you need to do with them, and then come back inside and change back into your t-shirt. Right, so there was always that particular option to upgrade. Great. Cool stuff. Okay, so let's talk about rapport. Rapport is really important. Okay, it's a close and harmonious relationship. I'm reading this out, in which the people or group concerned are in sync with others. Okay, understanding each other's feelings, ideas, communication smoothly. It's not just all about reputation. Rapport is what you build. It helps with the reputation. It's slightly different. I separate the two because rapport is what you build when you're talking and engaging with something. A reputation can be read from an email, off the internet, or a general web search. You can look up people's reputations and see how many gold stars they score in a particular survey. Rapport is when you're actually meeting them, you're smiling at them. It's that face-to-face interaction. Doesn't always have to be face-to-face. It can be done across the telephone. Okay, but what you are building is a good communication. Good communication and rapport helps both you and the customer. And I'll give you a good reason for that. A customer is far more likely to admit that they've done something they shouldn't have done if you've got a good rapport. If a customer phones up and they know they've closed Microsoft Word and they've actually not hit that button that says, are you sure you want to close this document without saving it? And they've gone, yeah, I'm going to close it without saving it. They're far more likely to admit that's what they've done if you've got a good rapport, rather than just throw everything back at you. So all your questions will come back with a negative answer. Okay, they're more likely to expand and be honest about things if you've kind of, built that rapport, and they can kind of go, oh, actually, Dave, I did actually close it without saving it, rather than just being 100% firm. No, it's not what I did, because there's got to build that rapport for it. And that's a good example of how things happen. And you build your rapport with the active listening that we said. The 3 A's help you build that. So we can do our active listening. We can create our empathy in there. Okay, to show that we are empathetic with them, to show that we understand how they're feeling. Okay, and we can align ourselves onto them. So tell them the we will help. And all that adds to the rapport. Good rapport equals fantastic customer services. So let's have a little look about how you build rapport. It comes along the active listening side of things and all the stuff we've basically gone through already, but we're just going to reiterate it because it is very important for us. So you can build rapport, striving to maintain a positive attitude. Yes, if I'm upbeat when I'm talking to a customer, not as in I'm singing and dancing, oh yeah, your machine's crashed, but I'm upbeat in terms of my approach to it, very positive. I'm sure we can basically find a solution. Let's work together, that kind of upbeat voice that you can kind of use. and very positive about these things, then yes, that'll help building the rapport. Active listening, if I'm paying attention, I use the paraphrasing technique to basically go and repeat to them what they're saying to me, but in a slightly different way, so they understand that I'm talking about the same thing. And projecting confidence. Okay, it may be it's the first call you've had, in your product support services life, the first time you've basically picked up a telephone to a customer. But let's project some confidence. They phoned you because you're the expert. If the first thing you say to them is, I'm not really sure, man, that dives and that affects the rapport, because they don't want to speak to someone who doesn't know it. They want to speak to someone who's an expert. Okay, and as you learn on your telephone calls, and I'm sure Paul will probably back me up on this, you will learn particular phrases that back you up. They're phrases you literally pull out of your pocket and try and use basically when you basically have issues and when you don't understand things, or when things you're not sure about. So, for example, if a customer phones you up, starts talking about things that you kind of roughly understand, but you've not got a clue about really what he's talking about, you can always use phrases such as, that's very interesting. Bear with me a second. I'm just going to check on that. Okay. And then you can revert to the, oh my God, turn to your colleague and go, what is he talking about? That sort of thing. So you can kind of build that end of things up. So you will get phrases you'll have in your pocket that you'll understand and you'll be able to pull out and use in those difficult positions. But half of that is about projecting confidence. Yes, I'm sure we will be able to find a solution. I'm sure we'll be able to do it. Of course we'll be able to do it. Yes, let's get to a solution for this. That makes them feel confident. And again, that and the AAAs allows you to build rapport with the customer. And that's where our golden handshake is, for want of a better word. Paul says, yes, always use positive language. Don't use, I don't know. Use, let me find out. Yeah, perfect stuff. I'm stealing my thunder there, Paul. I'm sure I've got a slide on positive languages later on. But yes, it's very much like that. A positive attitude. The negatives, no, I don't, we can't, are always deemed to be negative, and they damage that rapport status that you have. So just try and spin them on the head and use a positive answer for those. Any questions about rapport that you've got there then? Thank you, Paul. It's really good having those comments. Good stuff. Okay, let's introduce setting expectations. So we've had a chat with a customer. He's phoned up. We've built a little bit of rapport. We've used our AAAs to build an experience. And he's starting to like us a bit now. So the next thing is really going to be setting some expectations. It doesn't always come in that particular order, but let's talk about setting the expectations. It is really important that the expectations that you set and the expectations that the customer understands are the same. There's some beautiful work done by, I can't remember the guy's name, that literally talks about the failure in customer support services to match the customer's expectations with what you are going to provide. That mismatch will cause friction, will cause problems. You've got to make sure they align. So when you are having those conversations with the customer, if you think he doesn't quite understand what your expectation, what you've set, such as, I will call you back tomorrow with an update on the solution. If you don't think he understands that, you've got to paraphrase it again and get him just to confirm that he does understand that with a yes, I will speak to you tomorrow then. Because if you misalign it, essentially that is what we call a breach of the service level agreement, the SLA, because he's not understood your service level agreement that you've basically set for him. And that basically works with the expectations in terms of timelines. Timelines is massively important for setting expectations. Okay, massively important. I think we spoke about it last week, where you've got to basically match those expectations that you use in your ticketing machine that you basically told the customer when you've made those notes. You've got to match those expectations, if not beat them. I always used to cheat a little bit. I always used to extend those expectations and then undercut them. If you can get back to the customer quicker, wow, he's going to love it. He's not expecting an answer till tomorrow. and you phone him at 4:30 and go, yeah, actually, we've got the solution for you here. I've had a quick look. I've worked really hard to find the solution for us. Then yeah, he's going to be ecstatic about that. But if it drifts over to tomorrow, then you kind of still got a little bit of leeway, haven't you? So we try to use those answers. Who's ever heard, let's have a show of hands, who's ever heard of the phrase, the customer is always right? by only people of my age that have heard this. Oh, Marty, thank you very much. Right, so Nibu, Marcos, Malchek, Sebastian. Yes, I mean, we've all heard of this phrase. Me as a bartender 13 years ago, Luca, which I was in your bar. God, it'd be nice. Today's a bit hot for this sort of thing. Albert's still typing there. Peter as well. So I can see a couple of typing, so let's wait for those to come through. Well, on the flip side, if the deadline is up and you still don't have a solution, still call them. Thank you very much, Paul. Very, very valid. Always call them and let them know, yeah, we haven't found a solution, but we're still working at it really hard. Peter, mostly every day, yeah. Okay, how many of you think that statement is absolutely true? Perhaps I should do it. Thumbs up if you think that statement's absolutely true. Thumbs down if you don't think it's true. So thumbs up if you think the customer is always right. It's 100% correct. Always true. Thumbs down if you think that's not always the case. Kaplan, I like the way you did that. Thank you. So Marty says, yes, the customer's always right. Paul Bird is a disagreement with that. It's not the case. Marcos, not always the case. Lucas giving me some weird hand thing that's great. Shinobu is not. Sebastian is not. Ronald's not. So I'm coming to a bit of a consensus now that the customer isn't always right. Kibitsu, Peter basically says in there that mostly not in every scenario like restaurant and hotel jobs. Yes, we do know. We know full well. It's very true. The customer is not always right. The customer should not always get what they demand from you, because we know there's certain things that we can step into. Okay, there are certain things that we do not have to do. If a customer is always right and makes a demand of us, it's not a case that we need to do that, but we need to have a backup. If a customer says, you must come around to my house and fix my PC now, hold on, I'm not going to do that, okay, because it's not within our service level agreement. Okay, and we can happily refer back to the service level agreements that we have. Remember, that matches up with what the customer is expecting. Luke nearly got fired for kicking him out. Bars are different rules in bars. So we know we've basically got to do things and we've got to manage the customer's expectations, but they are not always right. Definitely not. So what you can and cannot do. So you should be clear to the customer in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. If they haven't read the service level agreement, feel free to read them out, sort of some expectations if they're beginning to go down that line of demanding something that's above and beyond you. You know, it's like in the bar, you can't have a drink for free. No, the drinks are this price. Here's the price list on the wall. You give me that money, I give you a drink, sort of an exchange. It's agreed because we all know this is what a beer costs, for an example. Okay, no customer will come in and expect a free beer because the beer prices are on the wall. So we know those things. So we've got to basically set that out and set that stall out. You know, there's a couple of examples here. You know, you will escalate up to level 2 within 72 hours. We never tend to use that phrase, level 2, or support level 2 or anything like that. And we don't tend to use escalate. It tends to be us as a team that fixes problems. Depends who's the boss as to how they handle the situation. Yes, it can be interesting with your boss. And we'll speak about those things in the next. So follow up and next step update. So you know full well as a support person that you're going to have access to view and configurations that the customers can't. Okay, so you basically need to be able to make sure that you can follow up things and set the next expectations for the context. We've got some good phrases here that I've written down that I'm going to read out to you, just not so much for the fun of it, but simply because I've seen them used before. I don't have the answer for you now. Again, that's a negative phrase. I tend to avoid that, but I will research this and give you a call back by the close of today. We're reasserting the fact that we are going to come back to them at a particular time. An email ticket here. Thanks for submitting your information for troubleshooting. We will review and have an update with our findings in this ticket within 48 hours. Again, we're setting expectations. So this is really what we're aiming for. Follow-ups, let's set them, let's set the expectations, and let's meet or exceed those expectations. Now remember, of course, if you've managed to build a rapport and some empathy with the customer, a rapport mainly, that the situation is going to get much easier. If the customer trusts you coming back within that time frame because you've done it before, then yes, you are going to get a better result from that customer. A bad update, as Paul basically pointed out, a bad update is always better than no update at all. No one likes no update. We all like to have an update. If it happens to be a bad update, we can happily live with it because at least someone's caring about us because they are coming back to us. Great. End every interaction with a time-based step. If you haven't fixed the issue, it's important to rope that time into it because that's setting the expectation. If you leave it blank and open-ended, you know, yeah, I'll come back to you sort of phrase, that doesn't tell the customer when you're going to come back to. His expectations may be you're going to phone him in 20 minutes, you know, and that's what he may be after. And your expectation is, I'm just going off now. I'll probably talk to him tomorrow. And those two don't align. And as I said, that misalignment is what causes all the problems. There's some good examples there, basically, in there, in terms of callbacks and email alignment. Escalations. Let's have a little conversation about escalations. Who's used escalations before? Who's escalated a ticket? It sounds like several of you have worked either in a ticketing system or in a support environment. There, a few of you typing. Alan's basically escalated before. Perfect. Maximilian, Sebastian. So we've all, you know, Paul Bird's still typing there. That's good. We will come back to what you say, Paul. I'm sure it'll be lovely. But escalation is important. We know that the majority of companies that have a certain size will have what's known as a frontline support desk. And that'll be a help desk or a technical support desk. Okay, and that's where 85% of the problems get fixed and resolved. Those that then take too long or are going to take too long and take you away from that frontline support area, or you run out of technical knowledge to basically do it, or the tools to basically get on with it, will have to be escalated. Yes, we should not be shy about escalating issues. It's not a reflection on you because your knowledge isn't good enough. It's a reflection generally on the system. If your knowledge isn't good enough and you're escalating too much, then management should step in and get you trained and teach you different things. That's the idea with the escalation. Okay, it's basically a stage where you stop troubleshooting. It might be, we used to have a stage at Microsoft where if you're on the telephone, the telephone was allowed to last, horrible phrase they used to use, 10 minutes. If it was going to be longer than 10 minutes, you had to take down as much details as you could and then escalate it. So while you're on the telephone, you were literally just wrapping through telephone calls. Okay, and we'd have meet demand days, which were quite fun, where literally everyone would man the telephone and we'd simply answer as many phone calls as we could just to see how high the volume of telephone calls actually was. Okay, and that's obviously quite tiring and not great, but it then basically put you in a stage where you couldn't finish anything. You couldn't really work on it. You couldn't find a solution, and you just simply be escalating it. And then someone in the escalation team would then basically deal with it. Okay, but some companies do set a time limit that simply says when the call gets to this long, you need to be wrapping it up and passing it on to someone else. I don't like those options, but companies do offer them. Basically do run those particular processes. Well, Bird says we had a tech level 2 department that you'd send calls to. Great when you're frontline, not so good when you get promoted to level 2. Benefit of popping up to level 2 is they probably give you a pay rise. B, they make you work on more serious stuff, isn't it? You are expected to know the answers. It's good fun though, isn't it? I certainly enjoyed my time. But it's important to remember there's no shame in escalating. It's what your company is designed for. It's why they have multi-tiers. Okay, we'll do a couple more, then we'll pop into a break. So when you are escalating, your company will have escalation guidelines. Again, it's a service level agreement set between yourself as the frontline technician and the second level of technical support, essentially. So there'll be a time-based escalation where they will guarantee to come back to you within, an example here, 48 hours. And it could be progress-based. So they will basically work on the progress and let you know. And it could be a combination of the two that they basically have. But the important thing, a lot of the time, the important thing, and the reason we use ticketing systems, which we mentioned last week, is because they know what you've escalated. And the beauty of that is you know what you've escalated. So if you don't get a response and you don't get someone from level 2 telling you how the solution is, because the solution should always come back down through you, and that allows you to expand your knowledge, that allows you to grow. So every time you escalate a ticket and go, Bob, I can't quite work this out, pops to level 2, level 2 comes back to you and says, oh, it's done by this particular toggle switch in this particular menu. All of a sudden you've learned a bit. So escalation can be viewed as a good thing for you. Paul says the front line would never do the basic diagnostics. So it's important to get the basic diagnostics done, isn't it, Paul? No, we said there's no shame in it. The ultimate goal, every time you touch a ticket, the ultimate goal is basically to get back to the customer with the right answer as fast as possible. If that involves escalating, then that's great. If it gets the customer their answer as quickly as possible, then it's fantastic. So if it's good, you get a good CX, customer experience. If it takes too long and it's bad, then you get a low customer experience. Okay, we ideally want these to come as soon as possible. And this is all about customer experience. So working with technical support with a multi-level means the systems can go up, tickets can go up and down that level, but it's important the focus that we have is on the customer and their final solution. And that's what builds CX. Cool, right, I think it's about time we had a little break. We're going to have a little break for 10 minutes where we can grab a coffee, a comfort break, an apple or a banana. And we will see you all in about 10 minutes, please. Well, welcome back, everybody. Hope you've had a chance to have a little comfort break on an apple and a banana and are ready to get going with our next notes. Let's see if I can have a thumbs up if you can see the notes on customer experience. Peter, Marcos, Mardi, Luca, fantastic. Edward, Paul, Precious, Fentanithasm. I'm going to have to work on my pronunciation. My apologies if I do get your name wrong. Okay, so working in any support environment, whether or not that's technical support or customer related services or anything along those lines, or a help desk, uh, the real reason that we're doing it is to improve customer experience. Customer experience, CX, is a broad term as to how our customers feel. It's really tricky to get measurements from it. It's really tricky to work things. But remember, it can brings us back to that first phrase that I used when we started this lecture. And that it's not what you say. They will never remember what you say, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. So if they feel loved and they feel that you've created empathy with them and they feel you've built rapport with them, all of a sudden those CX scores leap up. And that jump up is what then makes you essentially a good or a bad company. I think there's some traditional stats out there that basically say that one upset customer in a bar will tell 10 people how bad the service was. But you've got to get 10 people that think your customer service was excellent before they will tell one other person. Okay, so it tends to be a bit of an uphill struggle at the best of times, but there is some reading you can do. There's a link on the sheet that basically gives you some more reading if you want to kind of dive into CX and how to improve customer experience for customers and how to do things the right way. Not part of this course, though. We're doing some fantastic stuff already. So let's have a look at the fantastic next section, which is documentation. Okay, we spoke in terms of documentation when we talked about our ticketing system. Okay, we spoke about how important it was to get it right. Yes, we don't need to have the exact conversation that's had. Crikey, that would be a bit much. We'd end up writing War and Peace down and we'd be concentrating on typing things rather than listening to the customer and building our empathy and our rapport, our 3 A's, wouldn't we, if we're constantly making notes. But we've got to have essentially what the actions were. We've got to have the conversation recorded in a certain manner that makes it easy for someone else to pick it up and carry on from there. It's important to write down the troubleshooting steps. Every time you write something in a ticket, think, how is someone else going to read that? Not how are you going to read it? Someone else is going to read it. So what troubleshooting steps have been taken? Potentially what you might do next if you had the time to do it. Okay, and what the ultimate resolution does. So when you kindly finish it and you wrap it all up and you find a nice solution, then you write down what that solution was at the end. This was the solution, big bold letters. This is how we fixed it. There you go, close the ticket. And that's important, as I said, because it helps build the knowledge base articles. So if that's a first off solution that we found, and we found a key hack essentially to one of our systems, then yes, it may not be you, but it may be someone higher up the chain that will simply take those details and go, right, that's great. Test that, bang, let's make a knowledge article about it. And they come around and they give you a pat on the back. Because strangely enough, you've given them all the details they wanted. Paul mentioned about second line support technicians being a second line support technician and the first line support technicians not writing down half the details they should have done, not doing all the proper troubleshooting steps. Okay, it's a common issue. As a first line technician, your job is to cram that ticket with as much information as possible. Some of it may not be relevant, but a second line support tech may think it's relevant. And the last thing we want to do is bounce backwards and forwards to our customers. So documentation is key. It also protects your organization because it's a record of what's been said, what's been tried. Okay, if you've got a good customer relationship management system, CRM, it's going to help you basically track how that customer's feeling. As I said on Friday, I believe it was last week, it's important you only put things in there that you are happy for your customer to read. Okay, because the data protection law says they can request copies of all the conversations and communications that's written regarding those particular tickets. Yes, Paul, thank you very much. You're kind of echoing me there, aren't you, Paul? Yeah, customers may be required a copy for their records. Bear in mind what you put in that document. I think you were first there, Paul. I can send you a bucket of sweets for getting that one first. Oh, and my system has jumped right to the very end. Bear with me a second. There you go. I wasn't too far away, was I? Okay, and all this documentation helps make for a better customer experience because the next person who picks up the ticket won't be phoning the customer up, asking exactly the same questions you've gone through, because he's already got that documented in the ticket, which is what we're after. Good customer experience. Oh, look, Kahoot. Let's have a little Kahoot quiz then. Gabino, you here? Ready to make sure you jump up ahead and keep that lead? Let's see what we've got. What's the definition of rapport? Oh, look at that. Rapport is not a total understanding of the customer issue. That's fantastic if you've got that. That certainly helps you with ticketing. Rapport is a harmonious relationship with your customer. So you build rapport, it's harmonious, and you both understand each other. Well done if you got that one right. Try not to laugh sometimes at some of the answers that are on there. Joe jumping right up. Well done there. Is that Isham? I'm going to get closer and closer every time I try and pronounce it. Paul Gambino, Chris, well done. Up 4 places. Max is the highest climber. Let's have another couple of questions then. Which of these will help build rapport? Quite a few of you coming in there. Let's see what we get. Ah, there you go. Some people fell into that trap. 13 of you fell into that little trap. Striving to maintain a positive attitude. Definitely. You're positive. The guy knows that you care about him. Project confidence. If you're confident, he thinks you're great. He's confident that you'll basically fix things. Practicing active listening. Yes, because you care about it. So that builds the rapport. Taking detailed notes. He doesn't care what you write down. They don't care what you write down. They just want you to basically be doing all those other things. Certainly writing things down is going to help you find the solution in the end. Taking good notes does not build the rapport. Great answers, though. Good to get you all in there. Paul B jumping up. Tough round. 3 participants lost their answer streak. Okay, that's good. I like reading the comments in there. They're fantastic, aren't they? A lot of you coming in with fastest fingers in there. True. It is definitely true on there. Well done for getting that one in there. 2 more in this particular round. Let's see how that affects it. Paul's still at the top. Marty jumping up. Well done. True or false? The customer is always right, and I will do everything they need. Oh, let's see how fast those are. Still a split vote. We know the customer is not always right, okay, but we do need to bear in mind it's their opinions that matter. So they are not always right. They will not always get everything they demand. You know, there's a service level agreement that we need to work with, and that service level agreement needs to be understood by the customer, and that's where we meet together in the middle, not with any disparity. Max has jumped into the leader box. Paul B at the top. One more question on this particular round. Which of the following will help me manage the customers? Oh, there you go. Good split. Good split. We like that answer. Yes, certainly the ticketing system will help you manage the customer issues to a solution because that's the idea of a ticketing system. It helps you. I understand why people tick my experience. Yeah, because that helps you provide the solution as well as your paper notes. Good that no one picked their manager. Managers tend to manage things. They don't tend to help you through. It is their job to make sure that you've got the tools, for want of a better word, to facilitate getting to that customer's answer and manage the way that that happens. They will very rarely sit next to you by your desk and go, oh, I think you should do this. I think you should do that. They would normally be slightly distant. Thought it was multiple choice, Paul. Never mind. Drop. Oh, it's still up there, Paul. That's good work. Okay, so we can see how the leaderboard looks. Let's jump in with the rest of the rest of the presentation. Privacy and confidentiality. It is a big issue. You will notice that certainly if you start working in an IT department, a small IT company, or a small company with an IT department, they don't tend to close an awful lot off. As soon as you get that trusted badge of working in the IT, you will be able to access an awful lot of material. Okay, it's really important that you bear in mind part of your professionalism is that you will not disclose those informations. You should never talk about anything you read out of a HR file that you happen to open because you were trying to fix it for the HR manager. You should never read anything out of an accounts file that tells you how much people get paid and a variety of pay scales that are on. Okay, because that is essentially breaching the IT trust that we have. We are given trust because we are basically trustworthy. I can't remember if it's that way around. We're trustworthy because we're given trust. It's that sort of event, isn't it? Okay, you must ignore any private information. Someone brings a laptop into you and says, oh, we need to fix this. First thing you do is spark it up and you can see all his emails. Okay, we shouldn't be reading through those emails, and we can basically look through them to help us fix things, but we shouldn't be taking any of that information away with us. We shouldn't be sharing any details or any documentations or anything that is private, personal, or confidential. So always bear that in mind. If you happen to pop into someone's desk and you're wandering around someone's desk because you are trying to fix systems on them, please give the customer a reminder. Certainly if you're doing it remotely and you are going to jump on to take remote control of the system, we'll talk about remote control systems later on in these lectures, warn them. Just go, I'm going to be connecting to your machine for just a few moments. Please minimize or close any screens that have sensitive information on it. That gives the customer some confidence. It does kind of warn them. If you pop up there and all of a sudden, you're viewing their bank details, oh, that customer's going to feel a bit cringy now. Okay, and we damage our rapport in that particular case, doesn't it? So give them some warning. If you do happen to see any private information, please, or correspondence or anything like that, please ignore it. Okay, put it to the back of your mind. As Sherlock Holmes says, kick it out of your mind palace, I think he used. So kick it out of your mind palace. Okay, we should not be basically seeing that information and we should essentially ignore it. There is a small caveat in there, which is really when you talk about illegal and other items that you may or may not glance on machine. Okay, it does breach the trust between you and the customer, and your organization may well have some fairly strong views on some of these things. Okay, and if you do leak things, then you may basically fall into legal terms, and there may be legal repercussions because they potentially can link it back to you basically viewing it on the system. Now, as I mentioned, if you do happen to see something that is illegal on the system, you are not a doctor. Okay, you're not a lawyer. As far as I'm aware, in the majority of cases, there is no law that says if you see something illegal happening on someone else's machine, that you cannot report that. First place to go, it tends to be HR if you indeed run into any of those cases. Anyone got any questions about viewing other materials there? it is acceptable if you are in the event you do happen to remote across to someone's machine, or you are working on someone's machine and you find something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Like make you feel uncomfortable for a variety of reasons that we won't go into details here. So I was told never to talk about religion, politics, or sex on any of these calls. So if you find that you're looking at something that makes you feel uncomfortable, you are allowed to have a chat with the customer and politely ask the customer to hold or excuse yourself for a moment. Have a chat with your manager or your leader, or simply just ask them to close it. If it's an image, just say, look, you need to close that image or I'm not going to carry on working on the system. Okay, so we need to basically bear in mind that we do have those caveats. That doesn't say we need to work on whatever conditions the customer gives us. We have to be able to work in what we term as a safe environment, and that means a comfortable environment for us to work in. Any questions about confidentiality and materials? Confidential materials, for want of a better word. It is really a case of trust. We know as IT, we do get access to so much stuff that other people shouldn't do. But it is a case of bearing in mind that when you're basically doing the work. Good stuff. Okay, so I'm now going to drop into essentially what is one of my fun subjects, dealing with a difficult situation. Let's have a show of hands. Who's been placed in a difficult situation on a telephone call? Who's had the customer phone them up and essentially let both barrels go? Paul Bird, yes. Well, T-Mobile, wasn't it, Paul? Shouldn't say that, should I? Me as a customer, yes. As a customer, you can basically have it. Maximilian, yes. I don't think there's anyone who's worked in a support environment, either that be a help desk, IT technical desk, or customer services, or indeed a bar for that, who hasn't had to deal with difficult situations. And we're talking difficult customers here, aren't we? In support, the truth is your job is to solve people's problems. Okay, it does mean that every now and again you will talk to a difficult customer, and then they come in different scales. The customers that are just pretty difficult to all the way up to damn right rude. Okay, and it's frustrating because you want to basically provide them with a solution. You want to get it sorted, and they may not be listening. Okay, let's give you some do's and don'ts for these. Paul, you can chime in here, and other people, Maximilian, Sebastian, please feel free to share your experiences. Don't. Number one don't we have in here is don't argue with a customer or become defensive. Most customers you'll find that have had something go disastrously wrong and they want someone to blame. Oh, thank you very much. Let them get it off their chest. They just want to rant. I have been on telephone calls when I was younger, literally when a customer would literally phone up and the first two words out of their mouth were very loud and very aggressive. Okay. And then they just followed it on with the rants. And to be honest with you, I have probably sat there for 10 minutes listening to someone go on about how rubbish our products were and how terrible it was and how much of a disaster it is, all this sort of stuff. 10 minutes just practicing my active listening, making the right noises at the right point, letting him go on, letting them essentially get it off their chest, blow off steam, however you want to phrase it, until they calm themselves down. They will calm themselves down because they will run out of steam. And then you can literally tackle the problem. Bang in your 3 A's of your active listening as well in there, okay? Avoid being judgmental. Don't get defensive. Remember, they're not shouting at you, but you haven't done anything. You sat at the end of a telephone. It's the company's products that potentially let them down. Might be at fault. Okay, might not be at fault. But that's who they're really screaming at. They're not screaming at you. So don't be offended and take it to heart. Okay, don't be judgmental and jump straight in and go, our products are fantastic. Well, they're not fantastic. That's why he's phoned up. We all know there's faults in products. Maybe he's just misread the label on the box. He's put the disc in upside down and it doesn't boot. Okay, potentially. Okay, but don't get defensive about it. And it is not targeted at you. Always remember those ideas. Once these customers calm down and you find a solution for them and you get things sorted, they're normally very grateful about it. Okay, and you can always look at things in the post-match chat with your mates at the bar afterwards, basically about what went on. Remember, you win together, not as individuals. Avoid dismissing the problem. If someone phones up and tell you it's really critical about a sugar bowl that's fallen on the floor and is broken, yes, it's critical to him. We don't care, but don't be dismissive about it. Okay, it's important to them. Use the 3 A's. Okay, build that alignment, build that rapport with them. Do not be dismissive about it. Don't be judgmental. Okay, we call the concept of empathy on that. Focus on first solving the problem. Okay, remember, put yourself in the customer's position, because it could be really important for those guys or those people that have phoned up, but not necessarily important for you. But if you put yourself in their position, then you're going to come to a nice solution. So difficult situations, we've all basically had them at either one end or the other. Okay, we've all kind of run into these. We know we can basically look at the don'ts, but let's have a look at some do's. Practice our active listening. It is probably our #1 tool in terms of calming a customer down. Active listening, empathy, and building the rapport. Positive, curious, empathetics are key words in there. If you manage all those with a customer who's ranting and raving at you, he will turn around. Marty says he contacted an electrical supplier about a problem. So the customer services were not helping me solve a problem, but instead trying to sell me some insurance that he didn't need. Wow, that sounds so typical, doesn't it? So our 3 A's: acknowledge, align, and assure. Do those. That's why we teach you these tools, simply because it allows you to handle and cope with these issues. Always remember, set the realistic expectations. I know it can be really difficult. It's really important to a customer. There's no way you're going to get back to them straight away, but set that alignment. At least lets them know that you can try to manage it and you're trying to do the best that you can do. Setting those realistic expectations will then bring the customer down another notch as well. So there's 3 particular things in here, aren't there? Your customer can be verbally abusive or threatening. I think we cover that in a couple of slides' time, so we won't go into that massively detailed. The customer asks or demands to speak to a supervisor, and the customer will not believe what they're telling you. Sometimes they just don't want to believe you. That's more than they actually don't. They just don't want to believe. Remember, your role basically is basically to provide accurate and timely solution for the customers, not to take abuse. No company I know will basically let you sit there and take abuse from a customer. The general approach is we use a 3-strike policy against all forms of abuse, verbal abuse generally we're talking about on the telephone here. Okay, first step you basically ask the customer not to use verbally abusive language. Okay, it's a nice ask. You don't have to raise your voice. Just when you got a gap, just say, look, can you please not use those particular terms or not be verbally abusive to me? Okay, that's great. That's the first strike. Second one is inform the customer if they are going to continue to be verbally abusive, it's not going to be acceptable and that you're going to terminate the call. And then third one, just simply say, sorry, you're still being abusive. I'm going to have to terminate the call and cut the call off. 90% of the systems around we work with nowadays all have call recording. So the call's recorded. If you've been calm, polite, and pleasant to the customer, first thing that's going to happen is your manager is going to listen to that call. Well, he's going to get some assurance from you that it's okay. Your manager is going to listen to the call and he's simply going to go, yeah, you were great. You were fine. That's fine. That customer phones up in the next 10 minutes and asks to speak to the manager. The manager will pick up that phone call and say, look, if you speak to my staff again like that, we will simply not deal with your company. We will not work with you. Okay, I've seen managers very happily take that stance, and it is very much to be expected. You are not there to take abuse. Has anyone been in one of those situations before they've had to cut off a customer? I think in my entire career, I've only ever done it twice. And one of them was my ex-wife. Sorry, it was a joke. Loads from Paul. T-Mobile, was it, Paul? Sorry, I keep teasing T-Mobile. Yes, so we will get placed in that particular position. But remember, they're not shouting at you, they're shouting at the company. Don't take it to heart. Be calm and collective. Well, I'm Paul. I can't confirm and deny that. So if the customer, let's move on from that one. If I get myself into too much trouble. The customer asks or demands to speak to a manager. Okay. Potentially, depending on the policy you basically have, yes, potentially you will have managers that you can basically pick up the phone to you, say, I'll put you on hold, I'll just get you transferred to my manager and transfer it across to a manager. Not a problem, that's fine. A lot of the time, they just want to speak to someone else. They've had a bit of a rant at you. Now they don't think, they think because you're a frontline technician, they think they want to speak to someone more important because they want to speak to the boss. So they want to speak to the manager. Secretly, without actually confirming this, at Microsoft when I was young, long enough years ago, we actually just used to transfer it to a colleague. If someone was ranting and raving at one of my colleagues and was demanding to speak to the manager, and the manager was out or not bothered with taking the call, we'd just transfer it to me. I'd pick up the call, or I'd transfer to one of my other colleagues, and it's just a case of hearing a different voice. They think, oh, great, I'm chatting to the manager now. Let me calm down. Let me explain the problem. Let me explain, because I'm now talking to someone important. That's all it is. 90% of the time, that is literally all they're doing. Okay. Normally, we'd advise you to do what's known as a warm transfer. A warm transfer is where you basically introduce it. So you put the customer on hold, you phone the manager or whoever's it going to transfer. You say, look, I've got this guy, Bob's on the phone. This is what I think his issue is. He's demanding to speak to a manager. Can I transfer it through to you? Okay, when they say yes, you can simply say, bang, transfer it across. And the first thing they can say is, the first thing they do is they use their name. Hi, Bob, sorry to hear you've got a problem, let me help you. And straight away, Bob is now going to be calmer because they're speaking to a manager. Be sure to update your case notes. Call transferred to Bob. Good stuff. So these are things we can do. And indeed, your company will have different policies. Some will say it's got to be transferred to a manager, or there's no transfer to managers. But we have ways around these things, don't we? Now, there have been cases where customers will not believe what you're telling them. Even me, fancy that. Fancy not believing a word that I'm saying to customers. Yes, sometimes they do not believe you. Sometimes they don't want to believe you. There's been occasions certainly where, if, for example, a document has been properly deleted, you know, they click that button again, that traditional button that says, are you sure you want to exit without saving? And they've exited without saving. And you go, well, you chose not to save it. And unfortunately, that means the document's lost. They don't want to believe you. They will simply be going, I didn't hit that. I'm demanding to speak to someone. This is not true. You're lying to me. Okay, just simply break it down, calmly tell them what you believe has happened, to demonstrate that you can show what has happened. You can demonstrate that that file does not exist in that particular location where they said they saved it. Okay, it's important that you do that in a sensible manner. Sometimes a manager or a senior technician can step in, and that helps because they can then basically just reaffirm it. And if they get the answer from 2, 3 people, then strangely enough, they have to start believing what's happening. So those are sort of some do's and don'ts. Any questions about do's and don'ts in difficult situations? Anyone fancy sharing some difficult situations that they've been in? I know Marty basically said about phoning the electrical company. Paul Bird's probably got a bucket load of these because he's spent so long working in that sort of environment. You had someone you increased smart costs. Marcos, was it a I don't believe you, or was it a lots of stories of customers? Lots of stories with customers. Yes, we know that it's fair to say in the old days, technical support, product support services, and all that sort of stuff didn't used to be fantastic in terms of customer service. We've upped it now because people have choices. People will simply go somewhere else if they get poor customer service. And that's very true of the telecoms industry. It's very true of the computer industry. Very true of all industries nowadays. If you do not access and do not provide a good customer experience, customer service with that service, that product you're giving, people will simply not buy it. If Apple had rubbish customer service, no one would buy Apple products. You know, if every time you had a problem with your iPhone, you phone them up and they go, well, actually, we don't really care, and cut you off, strange enough, no one will buy the product. So it's all about customer experience. You have a massive effect on what people basically buy and how the company does actually perform. Right. Okay. Unless anyone's got some questions, we're going to dive into the last piece of our Kahoot. Let's see how Gambino holds up. Paul B, Joe, Marty, Marcos. There's still basically several people up there. 3 participants with an answer streak of 3. Let's see if we can knock a few people off the top. True or false? Taking verbal abuse is part of working in customer service industry. Let's see how quick. Oh, that shot straight up to 8. Let's see if you read the question right. Oh, I see loads of you just trying to get on a quick score mark, weren't you? It is definitely not part of working in customer service. You're not there to take abuse. All bird jumping up. Joe Gambino slipping a bit there. Marcos on a streak. Multi-select. Select 3 things not to do in a difficult situation. Not to do in a difficult situation. Yeah, definitely 3 things you do not do in a difficult situation. Argue with the customer because it's just going to wind them up. Dismiss the customer's problem, again, because it's just dismissive. It's just rude. Be judgmental. Yes, all these things are basically going to provoke the customer and escalate that issue. Damage your rapport means you wipe out your customer experience, isn't it? Well, and the last question of today. All bird at the top, Joe Gambino. We're all up there. Let's see if we can basically knock someone off the top. Multi-select. Select any 3 things you should do in a difficult situation. Great work. Well done, everybody, getting in there. Pat yourself on the back if you got those right. Stay positive, yes, because we know that positive attitude will promote rapport. Empathize with the customer and proactive listening or active listening, depending on which course you do. Gosh, let's see how that affects our Kahoot. Who's getting the bucket of sweets today? Gabino, well done. 3rd place. Joe in 2nd. Pats on the back all round. And the big prize today goes to Paul B. Well done, Paul. Paul Bird, I take it that is. Others in there, Marty, Marcos, or getting in there close. Well done for everyone for taking part in those Kahoot sessions. I really do enjoy those. Pat yourself on the back if you got any of those right. Finally made it to the podium, Ronald. Well done. Only took you 17 weeks. Ronald, there's probably still a few left, mate. You could be rolling in sweets by the end of the course. Okay, so we're going to break into, well, not break into anything. We're going to do a couple of little exercises here. So consider the following two ticket updates. Which one should you use and why would you prefer it over the other two? So you can type a which one you'd use and a why into the chat window. We'll give you a couple of minutes. Marty, tell us why as well. Oh, I see. Loads of you typed in A straight away, didn't you? Thinking A was a good one. A is a fairly decent one. Maximilian's bucked the trend, and Paul's followed him with C. Maximilian says he picked C because it's a professional tone and sets a clear expectations by the end of the week. Paul Bird likes it because it's thanking the customer. Yeah, great. Always good to thank the customer for providing something. Advises it's being looked at. We're looking at it for you. Yeah, we've got it. And we have a time scale for the resolution and taking ownership. Very much using the term I will review the data and update by the end of the week. Timeline is big. Yes. Josephine basically says there, C, even though the timeline is big. We've set a timeline. The problem with the first two, certainly with the first two, is update shortly. How long shortly? You know, how long is shortly? I mean, we've got trees out there that live for thousands of years. How long shortly? So you have to bear in mind there's no definition of when that's going to happen. Your customer may be thinking shortly is 15 minutes, and you're thinking tomorrow's 15 minutes. And again, we get that misalignment. Be precise about these things. Jack says we don't need to give the customer more information than they need to know. Oh, that's a very, I would disagree with that. That's a fairly old school way of thinking. I think letting the customer know what you're doing is good because then they feel assured. You're right in terms of exact details may not be needed. Well, one thing we do need to tell them is a timeline. Marty, yeah, I didn't consider the shortly. That's good. Ah, you see, Peter, you like that. Peter says A, giving an update later is going to give you more time. But then your time is going to misalign with the customers. Remember, you're there to set the customer expectations. Although it does give you more time. If you go back tomorrow to them thinking, oh, I've done that shortly, and the customer's expectations is within 15 minutes, the customer's going to be grumpy with you because that's a misalignment. If you want more time, yeah, by the end of the week has been used there. That's a long time. And if say, for example, today's Tuesday and I say I'm going to contact him by the end of the week and I get back to him Wednesday, wow, he's going to be chuffed. That's before the end of the week. You've beaten my expectations. So that's why I kind of sometimes say, set it slightly stretched off. So if you think you're going to manage it for tomorrow, tell them it's going to be the day after, if that's acceptable, and then try and get tomorrow. And now I think Peter helps you with gives you more time to solve it. Now, Jack, you're right. They don't need to know how we're handling it internally, but bear in mind the idea is to build some rapport, isn't it? So we're not giving any secrets away with that comment, have we? We're going to review the log file they sent in. That's great. That's what we asked it for. And we're going to provide an update by the end of the week. I wouldn't give them details such as Peter's going to look through the log file for this particular error that we know crashes our systems. See if you're getting that. No, I wouldn't go that deep, but I'd simply say the term reviewing our log file, I think, is broad enough to cover what we need. I've never heard of customer service telling me about tickets or log files. it depends on where you come from. I know certainly Microsoft and people like that will ask for log files. And it could be this is technical support, not just customer service. Bit of a stretch example. How do we feel about that, Peter and Majelsh? Yeah, see again, that's why I'd kind of refer to things not being great customer services. If your answer is stand by, we will provide an update shortly, 99% of the time, I'd be looking at that going, what is shortly? Let's try and set specific times for us to meet, because that sets the service level agreement, doesn't it? And I find that's much more attractive. By the way, you are allowed to disagree with me. That's acceptable. Yeah, shortly for me means during our phone call. So if you're basically saying, I'm going to put you on hold and come back to you shortly, that's allowable. But if you're saying you're going to contact them shortly, and you're looking to hang up and contact them shortly, then that basically doesn't give you the brief of the SLAs, does it? Okay, that's perfect. Okay, we're going to drift into the second one. We've got two of these little exercises here, I think. What's the best response to an abusive customer? Josephine, straight in with B, Marcos B, Marjet B, Kibitsu B. Certainly this, see Paul Bird's typing, that's good. I think when I look at both of these, there isn't a perfect answer. B, I mean, you're all picking out B, which is fantastic. B is the best one of the two, best one of the bad bunch, isn't it? I suggested perhaps my boss could help and transfer the call to them. You don't need to get defensive about it. It's going to calm the situation down, as Majet says. Yeah, perfect. It's going to calm the situation down, which is what you want. There probably should have been a C and a D option in there, but we never always get a C and a D option, do we? Out of the two, it's better, Paul Bird says yes. Give them a coupon for the next purchase. Sometimes that's the way it works. Okay. So in summary, I've had a lot of fun basically running this particular one. I really do enjoy it at times. So lesson summary. Basically, we've talked about professionalism. Maintaining a professionalism with clients is paramount for any support role. Okay, we know that active listening and empathy build rapport, and rapport is what you're basically aiming at. When in doubt, use the acknowledge, align, and assure on there basically to make sure that we key in those items, and that will then help us basically build the rapport, get to the right solution for the customer. We're kind of at the end of the session, but this is the fun part. You can ask loads of questions around this and we can talk about experiences forever. So I'm happy to hang around for sure. And in fact, I can see Paul Bird's basically typed some stuff in there. Just as an aside, it's worth remembering that when on customer contact us, we are the first voice company hears as the products of services they purchase and probably done online. In the customer's eyes, we are company X, Y, and Z. So what we say is very important. Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Paul. definitely. With so much online purchasing happening nowadays, you are probably going to be the first person they actually speak to. A lot of this stuff is automated, and maybe you're frustrated because they've had to go through some horrible automated system already that has not been planned very well. And straight away, they're a bit grumpy. So you're the first voice. Like I said at the start, if you're on the telephone, smile before you answer that call because it comes through on the phone. If you're tired, stand up and do the call. We used to do a lot of standing up and taking calls at Microsoft. And even in the summer, we used to run a massive long extension cable. And I used to take calls sat out on a fire escape in the sunshine. So you can have fun at telephone support centres. Good. Have we got any further questions? Any more debate? Any more discussion? Maljet, certainly there were some good points made across the board from everyone there. This is a really interactive session that we run here, and I do enjoy the comments.